Hello there. This is Raul Handa, the host of the FFTB show, and welcome to another enlightening episode of Fortuna Favors the Brave, where bravery meets success. Today, we have a guest who I'm really excited to talk to understand more about their journey. He's done multiple hats. He's an angel investor. He's worked for over 40 years with big family offices. He's worked with the Hero Group, Ranbaxy, Escorts. He's invested in over 60 startups, has written over 100 blogs, has met over 500 founders, and he's just the epitome of, a go-getter. He's a hustler. He's a finance expert, and he's a very interesting story. And that's what we're here to talk about. Welcome to the show, Mr. Rohit Chanana. How are you today, sir?
Very good, my friend. Thank you so much. And I'm truly impressed with your, name of the company, Fortune Favors the Brave, and FFTB. It's truly interesting. And I'm actually in the process of writing a book, which I will publish in maybe next 6 to 9 months. And the idea was to ensure that the book reaches with my stories, because I've been asked to share my stories many times, and I tried to cover them in my blogs. But in reality, a book is a different issue. And similarly, this, the podcast that you are doing is truly wonderful for me. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
It's an absolute pleasure, sir. I have a lot of questions. Aapki life story काफी interesting. You as a person are very interesting as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about how did you become the person you are today, throughout this 4-decade journey, and now as an angel investor and as a finance expert, as a startup guru. So we'll talk about that. But to start with, you've achieved great success in your life. There's no doubt of the fact that, you're somebody that every, corporate person in the corporate world would want to be. But there were definitely a lot of challenges that you faced in your early years. So let's talk about, your early years when you were a kid, when you were growing up. What sort of challenges did you and your family face? And if you can shed a little light on that.
So, my parents came from Pakistan. They were very, very rich, extremely rich. And when they came to India, they were almost on the road, right? And what happened was my father started a very small business, and he made losses, and he had a sciatica pain, and he was then, not doing anything. My mother, who used to eat in silver platter, etc., right? And she did not have anything. So my nani really took care of us. So she was a health visitor, family planning wala. And there she had a room, or 2 rooms, in fact. So we were 6 of us, which is me, my father, and 4 siblings. So I'm the youngest in the family. And, coming from what they had seen to what they were now was really, मतलब एक होता है ना कि दिल से तकलीफ होती है ये ऐसा कैसे हुआ, क्यों हुआ. But my mother was really, really very courageous, I would say. So, unhone mere ko, she put me into Delhi public school, right? So the total earning of the family was just around 800 rupees. And of which 200 was spent on schooling. I'm talking of 1965, right? Because 60-70 rupees ki fees hoti thi, 60 to 70 rupees fees and 20 rupees for the bus. And then, you had to spend on books, etc. And we had to pay rent because my nani had retired. So we had to pay rent of another 200. And there were 400 rupees left for survival or sustenance of 6 family members and my nani, which was 7. So we used to live in one small room. So those were very tough times. But what was interesting was the aspiration of my mother to put me in one of the best schools. My nani, she was, she was just around 4 feet 7 inches, and she would walk like crazy, at a much faster pace. तो कोई भी रास्ते में मिलता था, she would say, namaste to everyone, whether it was a sweeper on the floor or, whoever it was. So she would not differentiate people, right? She saw them as human beings. And every time you give her something or, you had to serve her something, she would say thank you. So gratitude, right? Value for money and being religious, because उनकी गोदी में बैठ के वो मेरे को पूजा कराते थे, सुबह हवन कराते थे. So it was a wonderful journey, and I think those founding years were really, really helped me build the foundation of my life. So whether it was spirituality, thank you, humility, पैसा नहीं खर्च करना और पैसे की वैल्यू होना, frugality. So that was all very wonderful. And I would call myself as an average student. Till school, I used to be, amongst the top 3 students in a class of 20 at Delhi Public School. Mechanical drawing मेरे subject था main. So engineering was the next way to go. But वो number ही नहीं आए तो वो गए नहीं वहाँ पर. And then, joined BCom honors. I had never done BCom honors before, but commerce. So I was coming from a science stream going into commerce. But God has been so kind to me, वो मेरे को pass करा देते थे किसी तरह. So that was wonderful. And then, I went into a CA course. I joined CA in a third tier firm, actually, not the first or the second or the third. So, Big Four, तो कोई जान पहचान नहीं थी, तो you can't get there, right? But I was a happy-go-lucky guy. So even though while I was studying in an English school, right, and all my friends who used to stay in that locality, it was a low middle class locality or maybe slightly above. और उनसे खेलने में मुझे फर्क नहीं पड़ता था, वो कंचे भी खेलते थे. I don't think people who were studying in my school would कंचे खेलेंगे, गुल्ली डंडा खेलेंगे, बैट बॉल खेलेंगे, वो गली में कुछ करेंगे. So it was fun. So the most interesting piece about my CA story, and which is where my faith or belief in God increased that much more. So you had to get almost 50% on an aggregate in CA exam, or you had to get 40% and you had to get 40% in all the subjects. So I was so lucky that I would never get more than 51%, and at least one subject I would get 40. It was interesting that one of the exams, which was the third group of CA final, I got 152, 40, 41 and 71. So, always passed on the margin. And it was real fun to be there. पढ़ते दोस्त, I could complete a book of statistics, which was 600 pages thick, just by reading. So I would never write. People are used to writing, these maths या physics, कुछ भी पढ़ना है तो उस पे आप लिख के पढ़ते हो. तो मेरे को लिखने की आदत ही नहीं थी. The books would talk to me. And as I grew up, spreadsheets started talking to me. So which was a rare thing, but God has been kind to me. So Durga माँ की बहुत शक्ति है मेरे में.
Interesting. So you've had an expansive professional career, 40 years. I mean, he was talking about the 1960s when, your family's income was 800 rupees. So you've seen a lot of Diwalis and a lot of summers and winters. Let's talk about after you did your CA, how did you start your professional journey? How did you get into escorts and then, ran backseat and then hero?
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
So, when I passed out from my exams, तो एक रिश्तेदार थे हमारे, he knew the divisional manager at escorts, and he was a tough guy. His name was Rakesh Chopra. So he's become a friend and दोस्त हो गए अब. So पहले he was a terror. उनकी आवाज टक 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 चलती थी, right? And the moment you would hear that sound and you would say that somebody is coming, so it was like a principal, right, walking around, and everybody is very attentive, right? So he interviewed me and he literally, fired me like crazy, मतलब वो उसमें बड़े tough questions पूछे और गुस्से में भी बात करी. But at the end of it, he said, maybe ये चलेगा, because एक रिश्तेदारी के बीच चक्कर था, right? So उन्होंने ले लिया, but eventually I became his blue-eyed boy. So there were 3 of us who became his blue-eyed boys. To get 4 promotions in 7 years or 8 years would have been a record at Escorts. So God has been kind again. While I was much below in the hierarchy, I was able to connect to the business head, right? And business head would, interact with me. And I remember this was a guy called M.N. Bagai. He was the business head for diesel engine department. Very wonderful guy, wonderful human being. तो मेरे पास आके बोलते थे, बच्चे अभी मेरे को राजन नंदा जी से मिलना है, तो कैन यू हेल्प मी, तो मेरे को 5 लाख रुपए का प्रॉफिट दे देगा. सो दैट इज हाउ लाइफ वाज. एंड तो एक मतलब ये जो एक अंदर आपके एक होती है ना, एक डिजायर टू क्रिएट अ विन विन, टू कनेक्ट विद पीपल. तो दोस्त वर्ड जो है बहुत लेट आया. बट एक्चुअली माई होल चाइल्डहुड, माई कमिंग अप वाज ऑल अराउंड creating dosti. Escorts was not as exciting, but a couple of instances, how I would play games with my team. So हमारे को वहाँ पर बिठा दिया गया. लोग average age of people who were working for me, coming straight out of college or CA, was let's say 35, 38 years, and some almost closer to retirement, but very few young people in my department. And there was a rule that, it was a unionized culture, and you would not pass more than, let's say, 100 bills a day or 25 bills a day, right? So that number you couldn't cross. But then I would work with them and say, let's play a game. So कौन ज़्यादा बिल पास करता है? So, उससे बातों में उनको पता ही नहीं लगता था कि हमने तो ये ज़्यादा आगे निकल गए. And then I would have fun and games with them. So रात को 1-1 बजे भी काम करते थे. When my son was born, I was actually staying in Faridabad, right? तो एक supervisor था, who was let's say 3 levels below me. तो उसके घर में भी जाके रुक गए. So it didn't matter to me. Life was, I was enjoying the journey, right? वो ये नहीं होता था कि रात को रुक गए तो परेशान है. This is despite the fact my son was to be born around that time. But I somehow worked around that. तो वहाँ पर इतनी मतलब ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग एक्साइटमेंट नहीं हुआ. बट व्हेन आई मूव्ड इनटू रेनबैक्सी, right, this was in 1990.
When did you join
Escorts? I joined in 82.
So 8 years.
8 years.
And then in
1990 I moved to Ranbaxy.
Okay.
And I was interviewed by one of the most toughest guys that you can ever come across or you can ever think of, Mr. D.S. Brar. He was the president of International Division. Eventually he became the number 2 after Dr. Parvinder Singh. So जैसे उनका इंटरव्यू हुआ, so I came down and I was talking to my friend and I said, दोस्त ये तो मतलब यहाँ कुछ होने वाला नहीं है, कोई दूसरी नौकरी बता. And funnily enough,
इंटरव्यू अच्छा नहीं गया.
Sorry,
इंटरव्यू
वो मेरे हिसाब से नहीं अच्छा गया, but उनके हिसाब से it was par excellence. So, and the reason why I say that is because my salary at Escorts when I was leaving was 6,400 rupees. This is 1990, and I met with the HR head, and he said, I can offer you a 10% increase. I said, यार मैं सब्जी भाजी नहीं हूँ जो आप मेरा रेट लगाओगे, right? My ask is 11,000 rupees. You take it or leave it. And
11,000 rupees.
11,000, 6,400 to 11,000 a month.
It's about 80%.
Yeah, almost. So nobody would ask for more than 10-15% exactly. At that time. Yeah. Now you can ask for 100% also. So, but उसको डंडा था ऊपर से कि इस लड़के को लेना ही आप, which is why I'm saying that he liked me so much, while I believed. So he would really test out your patience, right? That can you work with me? Because he was a terror, and he would take off your pants in public, which was good for me. And this is the second incident that I want to relate about Ranbaxy. So I joined them on 13th of October 1990, and 24th November we had a management team meeting. So I would have been the youngest management employee at that time in that meeting of 40 people. It was not a director, there were no board members. It was internal senior management meeting, and this guy was extremely impressed, T.S. Brar, and he was talking to me. And then one of his blue-eyed guy was sharing some experiences which was all wrong, and I would always challenge him. And he said कि यार ये तुरम खां कहाँ से आ गया ये, right? And then I remember 11th of January when he met me. We were 6 of us sitting in an office, and there was our international division head, right? So unfortunately he's no more. So when he was sitting there, तो बोले कि ये अपने आप को 30 मार का समझता है, right? And literally started firing me left, right, and center, and finding faults with me. Nobody could challenge him because he had a photogenic memory, and God was kind enough for me. I could respond back to him. So वहाँ से मैं नीचे उतरा, and I was taking chai there, and I called up the headhunter. I said, "How did you, put me in front of a guy who is a terror, right? And he likes to fire under the belt." And then I said to myself, what is my guarantee that the next guy will be, better or worse? It could even be 2x worse than what he was.
Absolutely.
So I said, let me take this challenge. So that was my first challenge that I took upon myself. And God was with me. 6 months later, I had this meeting with him. And, he would call people as accountant, and I never believed I was an accountant. I was more a business manager, right? So accountant मतलब मुनीम, right? So तो अंग्रेजी में accountant कह दिया, but actually he meant मुनीम. And I said, "Sir, I don't think I'm going to work with you." And he said, "Look, what have I said to you?" I said, "Either you take back your words or I'm leaving," right? So he started laughing. Nahi, kuch nahi, don't worry, etc. So there, this was the perseverance bolo ya kuch bhi bolo. So it was wonderful, right? Patience, tolerance, will to fight back, right? And then the next time I was doing a deal there. So there was this current account convertibility that was happening on rupee dollar. So I went and met with Mr. Brar. I still remember the rupee dollar parity based on which we had built our budget was at 34 rupees for our exports.
34 rupees a dollar.
34 rupees a dollar, right? For exports. And I said, if I give you 36, would you be happy? He said, absolutely, why not? So we had these telex orders, etc. Because at that time you have to have an underlying contract or an order. Now you can do it even without an order. So I sold all the dollars, and I used to build relationships with everybody who would give me knowledge or share knowledge or experiences, etc. So, this was SR and Reliance. I was just a chotu bachu, right? They were like billions of dollars or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. So I was like a chota bachu, and they said, "How did you know about it?" I said, "No, it is not about knowing about it. I just took a calculated risk, right?" So to me, the definition of gut is also your experience, right? You always take a calculated risk. You don't just go out and you don't speculate. And then what happened was that, we made in that year, during that one day, when the current account convertibility was announced, 36 rupees came down to 31 rupees. So we bought back the dollars, and we made 5 rupees on 13 million. So 6.5 crores in one day.
Wow.
So that was, and nobody would have even imagined that, treasury can be a profit center.
Right.
And we were rated as amongst the best treasury by Business Standard. So that was a great achievement because, again, as I said, the forex and the other exposures were not very large. The other notable thing there was we bought units unit 64 ek hota tha, tab UTI ka. It was a fixed income, product. Interestingly, the NAV of the product was, let's say, lower, but the price would always be higher. God knows why.
Okay.
So we bought this in हमारा ECB external commercial borrowings of $50 million आया था. We bought this unit 64, right? And by September, the price had gone to 18 rupees and 73 paisa per unit. So 4 rupees in 4 months or less than 3 months. So, so almost 100% return in a fixed income instrument.
Wow.
So, God, again, it happens because God is with you and they tells you कि बेटा जाके ये कुछ कर. Then there was this GDR issue of Ranbaxy. So it was a wonderful journey, and I had the authority to take, any amount of exposure. There was no control on me. I actually put a control on myself. So whenever I would do a deal, I would cut out because I was managing the personal assets of Dr. Singh as well. So उसमें क्या होता है कि आपका मन में चोर आ जाता है. सुबह 2 रुपए भाव है, शाम को 3 रुपए हो गया. So you can get it as your profit. But I ensured that somebody else signed on the deal sheet, right? So that अगर मेरा मन चोर भी हो जाए तो मैं नहीं कर पाऊँ कुछ. Because I could have made crores during that journey.
Indeed.
Right? So profit आपको दे दिया because आपकी डिमांड ही उतनी नहीं थी. आपको अगर 1 करोड़ प्रॉफिट चाहिए था, मैं तो 3 करोड़ बना रहा था. So did I lose money? The answer is yes. But again, as you say, fortune favors the brave. So I took some calls, which were calculated calls. And, the journey went by. So one of the other things that I told you about my first challenge, which was, when came across Mr. Brar. Second tough time for me was when I was offered a salary of, increase of almost around 250% by Hero when I was hired by them. I would have been the most expensive employee of, in the Hero group.
So for how long were you with Ranbaxy?
So Ranbaxy was 4 years. 94, I left them.
Any reason?
Sorry?
Any reason for leaving?
Yeah, I was coming to that. So, एक आदमी जिसको वो, he's a treasurer or, the markets don't wait for you. So they got in a guy who would ask for 20 justifications why you want to take that decision, and the market doesn't wait for you. So my boss, Vinay Kaul, he was very gung-ho about me. But here, maybe Mr. Brar and Dr. Singh wanted somebody who's much more level-headed, right?
Not impulsive.
So I wouldn't say I was impulsive, but I could spot opportunities. But according to the perception of different people, it would have been seen as impulsive.
Correct.
So, let's say if I was to take a decision of 10 crore, my boss will say, why not 100? So when this guy came in, so I said, it's a tough one for me. I can't really work like this where you have to prepare notes and justification, and it'll go all the way up and come all the way down. And by the time the markets move, so I'm not interested there.
Got it.
And that is how I moved on from Ranbaxy. It was amongst the most interesting, exciting, challenging moments of my life. So, for example, we didn't have Reuters till around 92 or 93. We were the first company to have got Reuters in a corporate office. The second and third were Reliance and SR.
Wow.
Right? And I would watch the rates on BBC. तो येन क्या चल रहा है, पाउंड कहाँ पर है. हमारे एक्सपोजर ज़्यादा येन थे, मार्क थे, so अब तो यूरो हो गया एक, but that time, each currency was by itself.
So Hero poached you?
I wouldn't say poached me. एक सुनील मुंजाल के एक दोस्त थे, he was a headhunter, right? So he approached me and I met Sunil, wonderful guy. I was, I was really touched by their warmth. So for example, he met me in Delhi and then he said, why don't you come to my office, right? I will take you around. At least you have a feel of the thing because, so they hired people because Ludhiana culture, you couldn't afford to pay so much salary. So therefore they said, why don't we get just 1 or 2 or 3 people like this who we can keep them at corporate office and they then go around and give you the best, knowledge, experiences, etc. And so that's why I was hired. But most of the people were in, Ludhiana at that time. So Hero Group, Ludhiana में थे. And I was surprised, he sent me, तब Honda Accord होती थी उनके पास, in 94.
Wow.
So he sent me his personal car, right? And I went there. He, took me to the lunchroom, his personal lunchroom. So, Hero के culture में एक family issue family वाला बहुत है चक्कर, which I will talk about later. But coming back to our interview, and then, he said, chairman साहब है ब्रिज मोहन जी, आपको उनसे भी मिला देता हूँ. तो उनको बड़े बाबूजी कहते थे लोग उधर. And ओपी साहब जो उनके यंगर ब्रदर थे, यंगेस्ट ब्रदर, so they were 4 brothers. So आप उनसे भी मिल लीजिए. And it was fun. So when I met so I was hired. I was the first employee. The company was not even formed. So I was on rolls of Hero Cycle from 1st of December 1994.
Interesting.
So the company was formed in February of 1995. And so I was there sitting in a small office because they didn't even have an office because I was the first employee. तो एक इनका बहुत पुराना ऑफिस था, आसफ अली रोड, very small office. तो वो डायरेक्टर्स रूम था, because they have also grown up from 1956 to become the largest cycle manufacturer in 28 years. When they were awarded a license, 137 people were issued a license, and they were nowhere close to being close to taking the number 1 position. तो वहाँ पर हो गया. तो ये मेरे पास आके बैठे ओपी साहब. He was a terror. तो मतलब वो पंजाबी में बात करते थे और कुछ उल्टा सीधा भी मतलब ऐसे ना बोल देते थे, क्योंकि इसमें क्या है, इन पंजाबी, आपकी लिंगो में ये 2-4 मतलब एब्यूजिव वर्ड्स यूज हो जाते हैं, राइट? यू यूज दीज एब्यूजिव वर्ड्स. तो वहाँ पर बैठे हुए थे 2.5 घंटे. ही वॉज इंटरव्यूइंग मी, राइट? आफ्टर आई वॉज हायर्ड, ही सेड, बेटा मेरे को तेरे को DS बरार जैसा देखना है.
अच्छा.
So he knew DS Brar, right? So he said, I want you to be like a DS Brar of Hero. And people who were sitting outside were wondering कि कर क्या रहे हैं बाबूजी, तो 10 मिनट से ज़्यादा किसी के साथ टाइम लगाते ही नहीं है. So that is how curious these guys were, both Brij Mohan ji and him. And when I came out, so they said, सब ठीक है ना, आपको मतलब आज यहाँ रुक रहे हो या नहीं? So it was a wonderful journey, and that's how it started.
24 years.
So yeah, this was 24 years.
The longest. How does one spend so much time?
So I'll be very honest. So when I joined moved from Ranbaxy, it was a cultural shock for me. There I was taking a decision of 50 million by myself, and here even for $500,000, I was told वो बड़े बाबूजी आए हैं, इनसे एक बार बात कर लो, right? And there was a very funny incident. So there was a guy from Citibank who was a junior dealer. So they said वो दिल्ली से आए हुए हैं, Citibank के हैं, तो आप इनसे भी बात कर लो. So when he met me, he said, sir, मैं आपको क्या बताऊंगा, right? Because I used to talk to his bosses, right? So that was a cultural shock for me. And first 2 years, it was, really not as exciting as one would have imagined it to be. It took me a couple of years to get into the group, but I am blessed that I did not leave Hero, because उस टाइम मैंने एक आध जगह नौकरी भी करी, but उसमें यही था कि सुनील बंजाल के पास काम करते हैं, and I wanted to be in North India because I never wanted to leave my parents behind for what they had done to me. तो वहाँ पर जब ये थोड़ा सा चैलेंज लगा, but fortunately what happened was there was a change management initiative which was launched. So that gave me the understanding of why people behave the way they behave. So one of my close colleagues who was running this process, he asked me to read a few books. So that is when I got into the habit of reading books, mostly management books. या कभी छोटी और किताबें पढ़ लेता था. This went on, and it was a wonderful journey. और उस दौरान, during that period, we had started to work with consultants, the likes of BCG, McKinsey, Bain, and a couple of others. So between 97 to 2004, it was, all around working with these people. So learned the art of frameworks, right? 2x2 frameworks, thinking strategy. I remember when I was with Brij Mohan ji and we were presenting a strategic paper to him that this is how you create a strategy. तो he said, बच्चे ये मतलब ये तो मेरे को समझ ही नहीं आती ये स्ट्रैटेजी होती क्या, हम तो रोज धंधा चलाते हैं, सुबह सामान आया शाम को बेचा, मेरा काम हो गया.
So they had no strategy
during their time. While in Ranbaxy, because he was a second generation entrepreneur,
right,
so he had matured a bit, right? But ये लोग जो थे, they were very driven by touch and feel, right? So suppliers जैसे ancillaries, for example, ancillarization or JIT, it became a fad or maybe whatever. But, it was initiated by heroes. So इन्होंने अपने दोस्तों को इकट्ठे करके, रिश्तेदारों को इकट्ठे करके ancillaries बना ली.
Okay.
Right? So, and they had no warehouses. Mm-hmm. So material will come, it will go to the shop floor, and by the end of the day, वो सब बाहर निकल गया. So no warehouses, right? They had, so Hero Honda, for example, had a negative working capital. So they would get cash, but purchases on credit. Journey with Hero Cycles. So I was working with all the Munjal family members. I would go around and meet with all the family members. Whatever their financing issues were, I would try and give my thoughts. So which is the other thing that I said, I was actually working with 15 companies and not one company, because I was dealing with the 15 CEOs who had the authority to run their business by themselves.
No.
And, 2004 was the first great interesting thing happened to me. So one of our companies was losing money for last 4 years, and we had dumped lots of money there. 4 CEOs had changed. And Sunil Munjal, my boss, he came to me and he said, Rohit, CEO banoge is company ke? So I said, yaar, this is something very amazing, मतलब दुर्गा माँ ने कुछ बोल दिया, और उससे 10 दिन या 15 दिन पहले ही मैं सोच रहा था, how will I become a CEO? पहले मैं COO बनूंगा, right? Because I'm a chief financial officer. I will then become a deputy CEO and then CEO. And here is वो दुर्गा माँ ने बोला कि बेटा जा तू बैठ जा उधर. So one of the other things that I had was I was never a fearless guy. And I always had an owner's mindset. So what is my definition of owner's mindset, which I have refined as I've gone along? So A, you have to be fearless. B, you have to have the freedom of speech, action and thought.
Right.
Right. And third, you should have the ability to say no. So ये 3 हो गए. दूसरी तरफ, are you being paid more than the market? Right. Then you will work as a knocker. But if you are paid less than the market, you will work as a Malik. So there was an economic criteria and there was philosophical criteria. So, 2004, this opportunity came and it was a dream come true for me. So the company was losing money and I had no fear कि मेरे को तो
एक बार भी नहीं सोचा कि लॉस मेकिंग कंपनी में सीईओ बना रहे, प्रेशर इतना होगा.
वो मस्ती थी सब.
अच्छा.
दोस्त ये था कि मतलब 1300 लोग मिल गए, मैं तो सीईओ बन गया.
अच्छा.
And I still remember, so I had taken a vacation planned from Sunil. So we were to go to Australia. So he said, Rohit, पहले चार्ज लोगे या आके लोगे? तो हम बोले पहले लेंगे, वहां से मोबाइल फोन है, वहीं से बात करेंगे अपना. So बड़ा वो एक रोब भी होता था ना तब, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में फोन आ रहे हैं
सीईओ का.
नहीं, I was the CEO. So my team would call me up कि सर ये प्रॉब्लम है, क्या करना है क्या नहीं करना. तो 5 दिन काम करा. 10th May, I was off to Australia. I came back around 25th of May. And, it was all fun and games there. So what would happen is that, I became so close to my team. So there were 1,300 people and I could not remember the names of all 30. तभी वहां से ये वर्ड दोस्त शुरू हुआ.
अच्छा.
So I started calling them दोस्त. So एक चाय देने वाला आता था, उसको भी दोस्त कहता था. अगर कोई सीईओ मिला, उसको भी दोस्त कहता था. और अगर कोई पंजाबी है तो उसको वीर कहता था. सो एक बॉन्ड बन जाता है, राइट? यू बिल्ड अ कनेक्ट. So much so that a guy who was the lowest in the rank was happy to come to me, right, and not go to his team lead who was promoted, let's say maybe a week ago. तो ये जो टीम लीडर था ये उसको बच्चे बच्चे शुरू हो गया था. So I built a bond with them. So I would never have tea in my room. I would go to a ढाबा, एक छोटा सा ढाबा था चाय वाला. तो वहाँ नमकीन और ब्रेड पे नमकीन लगाई और वो खाया. एक कागज के कप्स होते थे एंड वी यूज्ड टू टेक टी. सो 7-8 आदमी मिलके चाय पी रहे हैं और वहाँ पर उनको हो रहा है कि हम तो प्रेसिडेंट के साथ बैठे. मैं बोलता था यार मैं तो आम आदमी हूँ. व्हाट इज सो ग्रेट अबाउट बीइंग सिटिंग विद द प्रेसिडेंट. So this journey brought a tremendous change in me. So I started believing I'm a 21-year-old, and this is how this 21-year-old has continued even in my version 2.0. The only request that I had from Sunil was that I will not accept anyone to come from corporate office and give me strategic advice unless they can roll up their sleeves,
do the job
and do the job. I will not buy them, because that is when I realized that it is not about adding one and one कि एक आदमी कर लिया तो ये काम क्यों नहीं हो सकता. When I was at corporate office, I would say why can't they add 2 people and complete this job? They're losing so much money. But the point is there is so much of fires that are burning. In reality, life doesn't move like a linear. There are so many moving parts.
Absolutely.
So therefore it was a wonderful experience there. तो कोई decision लेना, and can you imagine, in 4 months we were profitable. 4 months, 4 years making losses, 4 months we were profitable. तो कुछ क्या हुआ? I would just go have fun and games with them. तो जो induction होती थी, I would ask these people, what do you think is my age? So some will say कि यार ये कुछ मतलब थोड़ा लग तो वैसे रहा है 45, 48 का, but maybe he's 60, right? So the range was anywhere between 35 to 60, and I said I am the youngest amongst you, and that is how everybody started reacting, treating me with love and affection. तो कोई भी अगर मैं आज भी जैसे I sent out a message, ऐसे ही किसी को भेजा 20 साल बाद, LinkedIn पे पढ़ा उसका नाम, and you get such warm messages from them. वो दोस्त को कोई भूल नहीं पाया, and this Dost has stayed with me even when I moved on. I was at a very high position at Hero, right? So लोग अभी भी वो कुर्सी नहीं है, पावर नहीं है, but इज्जत है, प्यार है, सब बात करते हैं. So this 2004 to 2007 was a wonderful journey and experience, turning around. And then there was the next thing. We said, how do we grow this business? So in 2007, that was the first global acquisition that would have been done by any of the Hero family. This was a call center in Scotland. So we acquired that company, and I wanted to acquire this company much earlier. So Sunil मेरे को बोलते थे, सुनील बंजाल, कि रोहित आप उससे परेशान नहीं हो गए, 3 साल हो गए तुम्हारे को ट्राई करते हुए, and this guy is not responding. And I would just write him an email that I am in London, can we meet, right? And it was never the case, and the guy was on the other side was also smart, right. So he understood कि ये कहानी बना रहा है. So we acquired that company, right? Invested money in that and sold it at 5x.
Wow.
Of our investment. So जो पाप थे सब धुल गए. So that is then there was the other story around insurance company, right? So we had signed up with Argo, which was a subsidiary of Munich Re, and look at the way how I would evaluate a business, right? Because multinational के साथ आप काम कर रहे हो, तो उसका CEO का अगर उसको छींक आ गई या उसका दिमाग बदल गया, तो आप आपका काम खत्म. So India बंद.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Baumard, right? Nicholas von Baumard. तो उसके बारे में मैंने पता करा. I said, who is he? Is he going to stay? Because he was the chairman of Argo, but more importantly, he was well respected in the community, and he had a 5-year stint. So I said, चलो ये तो पक्का हो गया कि हमारी कंपनी मतलब चेंज नहीं होगी, बंद नहीं होगी. और दूसरा, the other criteria was, will Munich Re be acquired? The answer is absolutely not. So therefore, that threat was gone. And he was the guy who impressed me so much. For example, he would come to his office in a bicycle. This is the chairman and CEO of RE, which was a 40 billion euro company. I think that's.
And he would come on a bicycle.
He would come on his bicycle. So एक बारी ऐसे ही Sunil Munjal was to travel to Germany, and this was a Sunday. So I sent out a message to him, and he said, "Of course, I will meet." So he got the office opened on a Sunday, right, and met with him. 2 घंटे. He was traveling to India, and he was entitled for a private jet. He did not take a jet. He came by, first class. He was allowed a suite. He took a room, right? So that is how down to earth this man was. And that signal was good enough for me that he is like us, right? He believes and respects people like human beings, and he's not driven by hierarchy. Unfortunately, Lehman crisis happened, and therefore we said it is not good time for us, and we had to wind down the company, right? We had hired people, we wound down that company. It was a 2 years effort. So building the company took 2 years, winding down took 7 days, right? Because there was nothing to be done. Similarly, there was another company that I played a major role, was Daimler Commercial Vehicle. And, I was not the driver there as I was in Ergo. So I would do everything in Ergo. But here I was the budget, shareholder agreement, etc. And it was fun that, I was on one side, I was alone. And on the other side, there were 7 people sitting because they were working in a silo, and they would say, "Yaar, ye aadmi kaun hai?" He can talk to all 7 of us together. So I had the edge because I could cut across all of these. So law bhi mere ko aata tha, financial planning aati thi, strategy samajh aa gayi thi tab tak McKinsey वगैरह से काम करके. So it was a very different journey altogether. So I had actually become, a business manager, so to say. So 7 people versus 1. And one of the most proudest moments for me was when Mark Listosea, who was the CEO of this company, we were, celebrating the signing of the joint venture agreement. This was, I think, in 2008, April or whatever. We were celebrating this. And Mark Listosea went on the, mic, and he said, "If I was to say thank you to one man," तो वहाँ पर, हमारे ग्रुप चेयरमैन बैठे हैं, सुनील मुंजाल बैठे हैं, उनका, they were senior people, folks from Daimler. So he said, "Rohit Chanana, I was so overwhelmed. I was actually in tears, right? कि 200 आदमियों के सामने आपको कोई बोल रहा है कि, this is the man who done the job." So मेरे को उससे मज़ा आता था. रात को 10-10 बजे भी ऐसे फ़ोन कर देता था. सुबह 8 बजे भी फ़ोन कर दिया. So that desire to get to a closure was extremely high.
Got it.
Right? So that also did not take off because we had, this Lehman crisis. And the next big thing that I did there was, the family realignment.
So let's talk a little bit about that, the family realignment, and also the exit of Honda from Hero.
Right. So let me start with Honda. Or let me start, so sequence-wise, family realignment happened on 25th of May, 2010.
What does that mean, family? Did they separate? Did they split?
They separated.
Okay.
So I think the elders realized that it was important that given that we have now 3 generations working, so just to give you put things in perspective, the oldest first generation family member was close to 85-90, and the youngest third generation family member was, I think, around 5 or 6.
Oh my God.
And the eldest second generation family member was, let's say, 65 or thereabouts, and the youngest second generation was 33-34.
So that's a huge gap. That's a huge gap.
Yes. So उसमें aspirations, experiences, beliefs, सब में फर्क आ गया. And therefore, the seniors took a call that it is high time that we should harmoniously, realign the businesses. So the principle was very clear that, whoever is running any business, he will take on the business. There were many things behind that. There was a lot of work that had to be done. So the back-end work was huge. It took almost around a couple of years to close this. And I think after that, so let's say if they were 1x in 2010, the value of the group would have been 10x in 15 years. So, that is the energy which got released.
Got it.
Because everybody knew that it was, he had the freedom now to do what he wanted. Whatever he loved most, he would go with that. Right? So, pehle decision making was very centralized. Now it was decentralized. And the second and third generation, people were able to realize कि मेरा बेटा कुछ करना चाहता है या बेटी कुछ करना चाहती है, we should give them the freedom. But first generation would never do that. So, reason for this realignment was that we should have harmony in the family and we should live happily together, even though our businesses have separated. And then the second piece was, the brand which has been created with blood and sweat must survive, and the wealth must not get, extinguished. So, or maybe we should not lose wealth. So intangible wealth, tangible wealth, and harmony.
Got it. As an individual, when you were doing this split of Honda and Hero, did your journey and the experiences of your journey, did they help you? Did it
100%.
Did it make it easier? Let's talk a little bit about that.
100%. So, this is where aapki jo values hai, which is I will always do win-win.
Right.
I will always be transparent. I will respect the individual as a human being. It was very rare that you would open up your cards to the other side and ek dar hota tha that he will take advantage of me.
Right.
So my view was that if I'm opening up, that guy would also open up to me. Right. So building that trust, that dost, तो उनको मैं friend कहता था, right? क्योंकि Japanese, वहाँ पर सारे ही Japanese ही थे. And, it was, so I used to read signals, for example. So the guy so what I was told was this is the BCG chairman of Japan who had a chance to understand Honda, their DNA, etc. So he said these guys are very driven on control over the technology. They don't they don't value market capitalization because that they believe is an outcome, right, of what we do. And the third was that the CEO will always be from R&D. So what that meant was that if the CEO is from, is an R&D head, logic, transparency is all that matters to him.
Absolutely.
So if I'm able to create a story, right, that is the first time that I would have worked on a PowerPoint. So BCG ke slides the. So I used those templates and created a 21-page story, right, on the premise that if I was the CEO of Honda, right, and I'm going to be losing 16% of my profit of that year, how will I justify to people that I have given away $840 million, right? So because I would take off my shoes, step into his shoes. Normally people say step into his shoes, but first of all, you have to take off your shoes.
Absolutely.
Right? So that is how I thought. And I created a 21-slide deck, right? Which meant that, so nobody on this planet Earth would have believed that you can buy control at $1 billion discount, close to $1 billion discount, 840 million to be precise, or 837 million. And, there were bankers who were willing to come in. So I said, I will sell my passion. I will sell my story. Most important in this whole journey was the trust that Sunil Munjal and Pawan Munjal had on me. And, funnily enough, I would send them a message even at 12 a.m. in the night, 5 a.m. in the morning, because kuch bhi dhyan aata tha, I would send a message and then go off to sleep. So one of the founders said, "Kya aap sote bhi ho kya?" Right? So it was a very interesting journey. So created a story there. And there were actually 3 deals running in this deal.
Okay.
So there was the buyout of Honda shares, which I was responsible for. There was the private equity who had to finance, or buy shares from us. And then there was the third one, which was the debt. So if there was a mismatch between the money coming in from Bain or the private equity, then I had created an option 2, a plan 2 to raise money by debt, right? So 3 most complex deals, and I had created a DNA culture fit, structure, where I said, जब हम पहले बेचते गए तो everybody said, what discount will you give? Because your liquidity is only 0.25%. So I said, how can I sell at 40% discount? That time the RBI regulations were not there. So moving on from there, then I said, I don't need a banker, or we don't need a banker. And this was a commitment or assurance given even to the Honda team that we'll work without a banker. So, one of the CIOs of Bain Capital, he said, Rohit ki kitni badi team hai? He's floating around in all these places. So how big is his team? So they said, he's a single man army. He said, are you sure? Because we have 3 MDs on ground. We have, 2 MDs part-time from Japan and Hong Kong. And then there are 2 of us. So we have a whole team working there, and he's alone by himself. Us time हमारा एक दोस्त थे जो my junior, he was busy in doing the family realignment closure जो चल रहा था. Documentation was a long affair. So 3 deals, 800 action items, dealing with 12 different regulators. So for example, even in tax, there were 3 different departments that you had to go to. TDS wala,
understood,
international tax wala,
understood.
So.
And how long did this whole process take?
So when we signed, so why do I remember some of the dates? So 10th of July, when we initiated the process, is my wife's birthday. 16th December, when we signed the MOU with Honda, was the birthday of my daughter. 1st March, when we finally signed the shareholder agreement, people believed that it'll take a year to get to closure. But I had a target of 92 days, and we finished in 76. And everybody was surprised. It was all about single-minded focus and managing the spreadsheet. So 76 days, 1st of March, my son's birthday. And the next part was, 16th April was my birthday. And that's when we got the money. The first tranche of money we got from Bain and GIC. And 10th July again, there was another tranche which was coming. So jokingly, funnily enough, I had told my friend I will be a billionaire.
In 2007?
2007, that I will be a billionaire because I can dream, I can feel it that way. So he called me up and he said, Rohit ji, aapka 1 billion to ban gaya, but jeb badal gaya. So, it was a very complex deal, and it was just that single-minded focus. So I would even, every day I had to take a Ceridon, right, in the evening, and people would tell me that you are so values-driven, aap spiritual ho, aapko ye kyun khani padti hai goli? So I would jokingly say, kyunki mind ko bhi thoda sa rest chahiye, but wo chalta rehta tha. So I would say कि यार भगवान के ये भी जो मेडिसिन बना रहे हैं ये भी तो भगवान के बंदे हैं. So अगर उनकी दुकान बंद हो गई तो वो कहाँ जाएंगे? So that is why I'm taking medicine. So it was a wonderful journey, one of the best ever deals. So 2 deals, the realignment and Honda. So the PE process, we had almost 10 people competing for the same product, for same offering. तो जब हम पहले गए बेचने के लिए तो 40% discount. And I said, I need to understand what is their need that I am fulfilling. So what is the voice of customer?
Got it.
Now, in that situation, what happened was, I could understand that none of these big guys had done a deal of $500 million. So हम तो सोने पे सुहागा थे because we were the largest in the world, right? So therefore, there was a FOMO which got created. And everybody was bidding for it.
And I think the universe also did its part with you being there.
So, there was no vested agenda.
Right.
It was just that I was enjoying the journey.
You were pure at heart.
Sorry?
You had the right intent. You were pure at heart.
So, for example, Bain Capital, हमने X price पे final करा. So, the price dropped after that, right? Payment had still not come in. So I told these guys, I said, you want to play a fair game? Then let's do a pricing on the day when you are actually making the payment. And I can guarantee you, you will pay much more than what you are paying today. Right? So, just don't worry around the volatility. And funnily enough, when the deal was announced and everything was done, we were trading at 200 rupees higher than the price at which, Bain had bought the shares.
Interesting. Now, coming to the next topic, all this experience of yours, as an investor, when you invest, how do you manage your mind over heart? How do you make that decision? And being an investor is a very risky job. And you don't know if the startup that you're investing in, the problem that these startups are trying to solve, will that actually get you where you're trying to get to? But I understand from our conversation that you've always taken calculated risks. How do you take a calculated?
Yeah, so, here it was not about calculating risk. It was, so let me just first define so that you will then be able to relate to why I'm saying what I am saying. So it was a tough decision to move out of Hero, right? First 1.5 years. So जैसे वहाँ पर Ranbaxy में छोड़ के जब 2 साल, I was not sure where am I headed. Similarly, यहाँ पर ऐसे लगता था, लोग बोलते थे that, you are such a successful man, so everybody will lap you, whether it is family offices or whoever, right? It didn't happen. But coming back to, so एक कीड़ा था entrepreneur बनने का, right? Intrapreneur to entrepreneur, right? So I had always worked as an owner. I wanted to work as an owner. Now, my higher purpose was हंसू और हंसाऊं, सारे जग में खुशियां फैलाऊं. 21-year-old student of psychology, philosophy, and digital technology. And there is a story behind all of this, and I'm conscious of the time. So not talk about that. And so this 21-year-old keeps you intellectually stimulated.
Right.
You have a higher purpose. I can't do it all alone.
Right.
Right. If I have to impact 100 billion lives, I can't do it all alone. So therefore, I had to rely on startups. So I created a philosophy of Dil Se investing, right? Which is very different. So not many people would have heard of it. And I have converted this into a science as well, right? So bio, which is the DNA, the values, who you are, आपने बचपन में कैसे क्या करा, नहीं करा, where did you lose? So in this journey, there have been times when people have even cried. They have become emotional. In one of the deals, I became emotional because these were guys who had gone through near-death experience. And, the interesting piece was, bio अगर क्लियर नहीं है तो मैं आगे नहीं बढ़ूंगा. तो 15 मिनट 20 मिनट का सेशन करता हूँ पहले. I talk to them, understand what's happening. And second was, the chemistry, which is, so if I was to assign weight, 60% is bio, 10% is chemistry, right? Which is, how do you interact with people? How does the world think of you, right? Because at the end of it, I am a founder's first guy. आपकी बाकी चीज सारी स्टोरी है, right? So then 20% is physics, or maybe 15 is physics and 15 is maths. So when I talk about physics, I ask them some basic fundamental questions. तो दुर्गा माँ के ऊपर से कुछ 0-1 भेजती हैं, गणेश जी प्रोसेस करते हैं, सरस्वती माँ वो क्वेश्चन पूछती हैं. Because if you see my investment, it is a very diverse portfolio and I cannot be an expert in all of those, right? So I just ask these first principle questions based on my own experience of having worked with the likes of Dr. Singh, Brijmohan Munjal ji, and Sunil, Rakesh Chopra, DS Varar, so all of those. So वो questions ऐसे निकलते हैं और कुछ मतलब एक I'm able to comprehend a few things. So that's how it works out. And then maths. So the physics is all about business model, business logic, product, etc., product market fit. The second part, the maths, is, do you really understand commercials? So you have seen guys who are scientist mindset, तो सेलू नहीं होते हैं, right? और maths भी भूल जाते हैं. So unit economics भूल गए because they take pride in delivering something which is amazing, right? Nobody has done this before, but economics भूल गए.
स्केलेबल नहीं है.
हाँ, स्किल, हाँ, मतलब उसमें वो, you know,
हाँ, मतलब वो उन्होंने उस पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचा ही नहीं कि
करेक्ट
वो अपने प्रोडक्ट को सेल नहीं कर पाते.
हाँ, तो उसकी जो खुशी मिलती है
कि मैंने प्रोडक्ट बनाया, बहुत अच्छा प्रोडक्ट बनाया मैंने.
Nobody has done this before. It is patentable, but is it commercially viable is something they miss out. So these four things help me decide whether I should invest or I should not invest. My daughter, who is my investment partner, so she keeps a check on me. She's MSc Finance from Warwick Business School.
Wow.
Right? Worked with Edelweiss, and last 4 years she's been with me. So she has a veto over me. Right? She decides my asset allocation. So I can't exceed those two norms. And एक बच्चे को अगर आपने authority नहीं दी, and you find a reason or excuse to move away from that, right, then that's not the best way. So I have given her full freedom and authority to finally say yes or no and how much amount. तो इसमें पहले जो हमने 60 investments करी, ये होती चली गई. I had never imagined. So I had allocated, let's say 1x. I actually went on to invest 3x, right? So, and the other thing, so you talked about the risky part of it. So nobody would have imagined कि COVID आ जाएगा, right? So I lost 6 of my investments and 25% of my net worth on one single day, right? But इस टाइम तक इतनी मेच्योरिटी आ गई थी, जो मेरा है कोई ले नहीं सकता, जो मेरा नहीं है कोई दे नहीं सकता, right? And everything happens for a good and a reason. So therefore there was no worry about it, because पेट भरा हुआ है. अब कितना खाओगे? 2 रोटी खाओगे, आज आप मर्सिडीज चला रहे हो, कल आप कुछ और चला लोगे. वही है, गाड़ी तो 4 पहिए की है, पॉइंट A टू पॉइंट B है. घर में आपको एक 6 फुट बाय 6 फुट का बेड चाहिए, राइट? सो पैसे से आई वॉज नेवर ड्रिवन. मेरे को हंगर टू लर्न, एंड इवन इफ आई मेड 5% रिटर्न, आई वॉज हैप्पी. सो माई हायर पर्पज वॉज गेटिंग फुलफिल्ड इफ आई वॉज एबल टू लर्न. तो कंपनी गई, तो माई डॉटर टोल्ड मी, ही सेड, आप मेरे को एक बात बताओ, आप जो आज की डेट में आपकी लोगों से रिस्पेक्ट बनी, वो आप पैसा दे के ऐसे कमा सकते थे क्या? राइट? So it's been a wonderful journey, and I have enjoyed every minute of it.
As an investor, Mr. Chanana, you talked about the bio, the chemistry, the physics, the unit economics, the math. But for aspiring entrepreneurs, everybody, like we have 18-year-old entrepreneurs, we've got young 15-year-olds, we've got people who start their second innings as an entrepreneur. What is one advice?
So I would say, if I was reborn, right, I would love to have a guru at the age of 3, right? And my sincere advice to most of these people is to have a guru. And I will touch upon, the definition of guru, because otherwise you will not be able to relate to why I'm saying what I'm saying. So 10% is parent, right? A guru's role is 10% as a parent, which is inspire, energize, provide clarity of thought, and be available 24/7 and ensure they remain authentic and they are driven by values, right? Foundation values से ही बनती है,
right?
वही मैंने दोनों कंपनीज में सीखा,
right?
Ranbaxy और Escorts में. So the founders have to be driven by the values. So there is something that I would say, value, what is my distinctive value proposition? Go deep into it, understand the product market fit, etc. And then go for value creation. If you go after valuation, right, then you are thinking short term, and then therefore 9 out of 10 startups will fail.
Absolutely.
But if you are thinking of impact, right, value, distinctive value proposition and value creation, it happens, and you have to enjoy the journey. So don't, sometimes it just so happens that हम ना वो बिल्कुल बच्चे बन जाते हैं. So I'm not able to think like a parent. So you have to have this parent to parent conversation. Coming back to the guru piece, 10% is parent, 70% you are a dost. So you should actually be a विधुर जैसा दोस्त, जो कड़वा सच बोले, बट अच्छी लैंग्वेज में बोले, काम होके बोले. विधुर कड़वा सच कड़वा बोलते थे, right? So 70%, because most of these people need your advice,
right?
And you have to think of them at dost or parent to parent, or maybe they are slightly ahead of you, because उसमें क्या होता है कि अगर आपने किसी को एडवाइस दी, उसने नहीं मानी, तो 65 साल के हमारा मुंह सूज जाएगा, राइट, कि ये मतलब ये तो मानता ही नहीं है, तो मैं इसके अगर 10 में से 6 नहीं मानी, दैट मीन्स वी हैव अ disconnect. And 20% I am a child. So this is my philosophy. So my advice to the founders would be to be values driven, have a guru, right? Be nimble, agile. For example, initially आपको survival का होता है. So ensure that you don't overreach or go for an overkill, right? Values to me is the core. Build a culture of performance, agility. So one last thing which I say to these people is, you have a higher purpose, which is your soul. You have a core human value, which is your heart. You have the core business value, which is your brain. And you have core operating philosophy. So don't lose connect with the people.
Absolutely.
Whether it is people, your customers. So Brijmohan ji और प्रविंदर सिंह जी, सबको यही देखा, मतलब वो एक फैमिली बना के काम करते थे.
Right. Last question. What has been one anecdote or one mantra that you've abided by in your life that has, gotten you to where you are today?
It is all about gratitude. Continue to seek blessings. Live by your values. Think win-win. I know I'm talking, at the core is all about gratitude and respect people. Don't have your own ego. There is always more than one right answer, right? So acceptance aa jati hai, forgiveness aa jati hai.
जी, बिल्कुल.
So, I will just end by giving you what I say in the morning at 3:34 or 5 a.m. whenever I get up in the morning. I sleep after that for sure. So, मैं दुर्गा माँ को कहता हूँ, आपने मुझे इतनी खुशियाँ दी, आपने तो कमाल ही कर दिया, right? This is even on a day when my daughter was to be operated, right? Then there is, I have completely surrendered. So I keep reminding myself, Samarpan, Prerna, Dharya, Urja, blessings, gratitude, forgiveness, acceptance, love, दुर्गा की रजा, राइट? गॉड की मर्जी. आप तो वहीं से आए तो आपको तो समझ आएगी
जी.
दुर्गा की रजा, आजमाइश, अपनी दुआओं में रखना और सब्र. ये उर्दू के वर्ड्स हो गए. और उसके बाद श्रद्धा, त्याग, विश्वास, ऋण एंड निस्वार्थ. सो ये मैं अपने आप को सुबह रोज़ बोलता हूँ जब भी उठता हूँ, टू रिमाइंड माई सेल्फ दैट आई शुड स्टे विद इन दिस. और ग्रैटिट्यूड की भी मेरी एक बहुत लंबी लाइन है, वो मैं दिन में और किसी टाइम पूजा में करता हूँ.
Wow. So, one thing I've taken away, think I've not seen someone as humble as you are. And I think that comes with, the fact that you've always told yourself to remain grounded, gratitude, humble. And I agree with you. Family, I think being a part, treating people like they're your own versus actually meaning that has a significant impact. And I've also learned one more thing, that there's always more than one right answer. Correct. Thank you so much for your time today, Mr. Chanana. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Do follow us on our social media channels to listen to more inspiring stories. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you soon. Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
I became so close to my team. So there were 1,300 people and I could not remember the names of all 13. तभी वहां से ये वर्ड दोस्त शुरू हुआ.
अच्छा.
So I started calling them दोस्त. So एक चाय देने वाला आता था, उसको भी दोस्त कहता था. अगर कोई CEO मिला, उसको भी दोस्त कहता था. और अगर कोई पंजाबी है तो उसको वीर कहता था. So एक बॉन्ड बन जाता है, right? You build a connect. So much so that guy who was the lowest in the rank was happy to come to me, right, and not go to his team lead who was promoted, let's say maybe a week ago. तो ये जो team leader था, ये उसको बच्चे शुरू हो गया था. So I built a bond with them. So I would never have tea in my room. I would go to a ढाबा, एक छोटा सा ढाबा था चाय वाला. तो वहाँ नमकीन और ब्रेड पे नमकीन लगाई और वो खाया. एक कागज़ के कप्स होते थे एंड यू नो वी यूज्ड टू टेक टी. सो 7-8 आदमी मिलके चाय पी रहे हैं और वहाँ पर उनको हो रहा है कि हम तो प्रेसिडेंट के साथ बैठे. मैं बोलता था यार मैं तो आम आदमी हूँ. यू नो व्हाट इज सो ग्रेट अबाउट बीइंग सिटिंग विद द प्रेसिडेंट. सो you know this journey brought a tremendous change in me. So I started believing I'm a 21-year-old, and this is how this 21-year-old has continued even in my version 2.0.